Zuzana, The Art of Translation by Jiří Levý has now been published in English. Can you tell us what the whole project involved and how long it took?
Well, it actually took 3 years and there were many things involved in it.
Such as?
I'll just mention the most important ones, which I think are most important. First, Levy published his Czech text in 1963, but then he was asked to prepare a version for a German translation and another version for a Russian translation. So he actually reworked the whole thing, and he actually said in those versions what he wanted, but they were adapted to another readership, especially in terms of the focus of interest, for example, on German languages and cultures, in contact with other cultures and so on. And he also exchanged his examples.
Uh-huh. And so how did you deal with that particular problem?
Well, I must say that even the version that was published in 1983, which was the basis of our translation, was in actual fact a back translation from the German version, completed or complemented with the very first version in Czech published in 1963. So it's a kind of cosmopolitan version and quite a complicated case for translation studies, I must admit.
And what was your approach then in dealing with this very strange setup?
Well, in fact, we had to use a combined technique, so to say, so that there were some omissions, additions, substitutions, back translations, and so especially with the textual examples.
Yeah. And what other kinds of problems did you have to deal with?
Well, that was a problem that I discovered only when I received the first version of the translation into English. And then I realized that the problem is that Levy would be interpreted by readers with different backgrounds. And the very problem is that the Czech structuralist background on which Levy based his book is almost unknown outside my country. So then I went to the internet and checked what was actually known about Czech structuralism, and to my surprise I found out that there was a kind of stereotype which presents or interprets Czech structuralism as Russian formalism and dead, because French structuralism is dead, which is absolutely misleading, of course.
Yes, well, speaking as an Englishman, that brings back some memories of my studies in Oxford. But that being the problem, what did you then do?
Well, there followed a very long period of discussions between me and Patrick Cornes, who is the translator. Then I did some research and a lot of editing. I also tried to add some footnotes and provided the book with a kind of introduction where I tried to prepare the readers for this strange or unknown, or mostly unknown background.
Okay. And you said that Czech structuralism is very poorly known, or perhaps not known at all outside of the Czech Republic. Are there any reliable sources online where you can find out about Czech structuralism?
Well, from the sources I know, I think I would recommend the Cambridge History of Literary Criticism. So you just search for the Prague School, and there is a whole chapter on Prague structuralism, and I think it's quite valuable.
Another issue is that this is a translation of a book originally published in the past, of course. Some decades have passed. There have been major developments in the humanities generally, and of course translation studies have moved on as well, and they have to keep up with present-day reality. How have you taken account of that?
Yes, sure. There's a lot of new things, and the fact is that perhaps some may have only been rediscovered. For example, individual agency of the translator. For example, reception and phenomenology. For example, translation as a hybrid of languages and cultures. And from the methodological point of view, for example, the need for dynamic and dialectic categories, the need for explanation and axiology, and of course, a quest for a theory derived from practice and in service of practice. That is a theory that is usable for practical purposes. For example, but there are many, many more things.
Mm-hmm. Well, it sounds like an awful lot. Do you think it is in here, in The Art of Translation by Jiří Levý?
Well, I'd like to believe so, but it very much depends on the reader.
Mm-hmm.
However, I think that the issue of ideology and sociology especially may have been treated in more explicitly in some other works by Levy.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And in conclusion, can I ask you, what are your next plans?
Well, let's wait for the reader response, as we say. Levy wrote many things. He published over 200 items. And the book at hand is his latest and synthetic work. But if it is now up to small cultures, as José Lambert suggested, to contribute to the international pool of knowledge in translation studies, well, then perhaps we might come up with something more or new.
Well, if you do, we shall certainly look forward to it. Thank you, Zuzana.
Thank you, Roderick.